The current events. I mean, there's so much which is going on, so much I could talk about. 2 hours wouldn't be enough. So I want to keep it short. But we are starting with the fact that in Denmark, they are now introducing mandatory military service for women. Now, there have been other European countries where you had mandatory military service for women, Norway and Sweden. And of course, Israel. Israel remains the longest standing example. Women have served compulsory terms since 1949. Now, we are saying in our comments, it is interesting that 3 European countries, descendants of the ancient house of Israel, as well as the state of Israel, descendant of Judah, would have mandatory military service for women. Nobody else in Europe, at least not at this point. So, descendants of the house of Israel paving the way in a wrong way. Clearly a wrong way. The Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, ignited a firestorm when he suggested that nuclear weapons should be used against Israel. He said, Spain would do it if we had nuclear weapons, but unfortunately we don't have them. So this is kind of a very provocative statement, but it also shows the political developments and the prophetic developments, because Europe will ultimately use nuclear weapons against the state of Israel, as well as the United States of America and Great Britain. I'll talk about Great Britain and the US in a moment. Of course, we have a lot to say about Charlie Kirk's murder, the investigation, political assassinations in America, which are not unheard of. And of course, recently they are really increasing. And of course, we have an article about Germany's radical left and how they dealt with the murder. But I'd like to talk a little bit about Russia's attack on Poland. Now, you remember that Russian drones entered airspace in Poland. Some have suggested, President Trump has suggested, that maybe it was a mistake. Of course, this article points out absolutely no mistake. And I will show you in a moment that the reason for that not having been a mistake at all, it was very deliberate. And of course, then we point out that this is now a dangerous escalation, but quite frankly, the dangerous escalation has become more dangerous after we have published the update, because after what we talked about, there were 2 attacks so far. First on I'm sorry, I'm talking about Poland now. It's different now. I'm talking about that one too. I was just jumping ahead to another one I want to talk about in a moment. But when it comes to Poland, subsequent to this attack on Poland airspace, there was another attack, and this time not only with drones, but also with jets by Russia on Lithuania, Romania, and then on Poland again. And when it came to Lithuania, they have been in the air for about 12 minutes, and it was clear that they were testing NATO, trying to figure out what's NATO going to do. Of course, they didn't do anything. And I think Putin wants to find out how far can he go. Lithuania is quite interesting because it's a very strategically important country, and the suggestion is that he, once he is done with Ukraine, is going to go into Lithuania and 2 other ex-Soviet Baltic states to take those over. And nobody at this point thinks that any peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine is going to come anytime soon. I mean, this idea like, oh, well, Trump is going to bring about peace, that might as well forget. But you see, it's a dangerous situation because I think Putin is trying to test the waters. All of that is deliberate, no question about it. It's all done on purpose to see how NATO will react. Now, in this context, we're going to publish an article which was actually published, I believe it in The Sun, how it could all develop. A very eye-opening article. It goes into the speculation somewhat of a former NATO commander in England who is saying, okay, this is what Putin is going to do. And he brings up Lithuania, interestingly enough, as the country where he will strike first. And he will do it very similar to what he did with Ukraine until he has a quote-unquote justification to step into Lithuania, as he did when it came to Ukraine. And the other two countries are Latvia and Estonia. He says, while all this is going on, and while Europe will be all occupied with Putin's further aggressions, China will move and will launch an attack on Taiwan, because Europe is already pretty much occupied with the other situation. And what is Trump going to do? According to this former NATO commander, he says Trump will object. He will say, oh, China is going to be slapped with a motherload of all sanctions, but he will fall short of supporting the island with necessary military aid. Now, I found this extremely interesting because at the same time, when this guy wrote this, the Telegraph announced that Trump blocked $400 million military aid for Taiwan, something which had been promised. He blocked, it's not going to be paid, because of a potential summit with China's leader, Xi Jinping. So in other words, look at these two occurrences and it's amazing. But then he also says something else, which is also amazing in light of biblical prophecy, and that's why I felt this article was really something we should all read. He says, while all of that's going on, NATO has been dissolved pretty much. His words are disintegrated. And Britain is exposed as a tiny island, no better able to defend itself than Taiwan. Now, does that sound familiar in the light of biblical prophecy? Because Europe is going to turn against Britain. And nobody is there to defend Britain. And they will be all left alone. Going back to the update, I felt Britain's attempts to woo Trump were quite interestingly described in an article by DNYUZ. We have titled this article, King Trump in Britain, and just giving you a few excerpts from it. The United Kingdom shamelessly prostrated itself at the feet of Donald Trump on Wednesday, throwing a lavish welcoming party for his state visit to Windsor that resembled less diplomacy and more fealty. Trump demands spectacle, Britain provides it. He wants to be a king, and for a day, Britain is letting him. In doing so, the UK has revealed something deeply unflattering about itself. In the scramble to keep America close, it will debase itself and its values completely. This is what the special relationship between the United States and the UK now means. If that's what it means, then it looks to many in Britain less like a partnership and more like feudal servitude. This is national embarrassment for a once proud nation. Of course, that is the British perspective, and many in Britain feel that way. Not everybody, but many do. And so this is also something which, again, we should keep in mind. The relationship between Britain and the United States is going to go down, deteriorate as well. That's what the Bible also has been saying. Now, the one I want to talk about now is Trump striking again. Of course, we reported about the fact that he blew up, or had blown up, a boat in the Caribbean, filled allegedly with drug dealers and drugs, and it was blown up to pieces. Several people died. And we have been writing about this in this particular update, and also the previous one, and asking the question, well, how is that even legal? How can he even do that? And many attorneys are saying, no, he cannot do this. One article is asking the question, is he getting away with murder? And the article then points out what the legal requirements are for dealing with ships on the high sea if there is a suspicion that it has drugs, even if the drugs are supposed to go to the United States. Just blowing up a ship like that and killing people thereby is, legally speaking, a violation. Of course, he did it again. You probably heard about it. Yesterday he blew up another one, and I believe 3 people died this time. Now, what is shocking to me, and this goes back to Mr. Mitchell's editorial on violence. Let me just read it first of all. It's an article by the BBC, dated September 19. President Donald Trump has said U.S. forces carried out a lethal strike on a vessel which he said was trafficking drugs, and the attack killed 3 male narco-terrorists on board. He said he ordered the attack, which was in the U.S. Southern Command's area of responsibility, after U.S. intelligence confirmed it was trafficking drugs. It was the 3rd such strike on alleged drug boats in recent weeks. And then what Trump did, he posted on his network a video, and first showing the boat, and then showing how it is being blown up. In other words, showing the killing of those people. Because everybody knows that's what it shows, the killing of those people. From a godly standpoint, that is as ungodly as you can possibly imagine. From a legal standpoint, it looks like it's also illegal. So who is now going to hold Trump and those who are working under his command accountable? The only way how you can hold them accountable and him would be an impeachment, convicting him of high treason, murder. Of course, the Democrats blew it twice with having some ridiculous impeachment procedures going on in the past, which were destined to failure from the outset. So they're not going to do anything about this now. And so he will probably get away with it, and he will continue doing that. Now, I honestly hope, that we are able to see how wrong that is. That we haven't seared our conscience so much that we are looking at this, oh, well, okay, well, he killed some more drug dealers, fine, let's go on with our daily work. I mean, first of all, we don't even know that these people were drug dealers. Secondly, we don't even know whether they were moving towards the United States. But even if all of that is true, he has no right under the law made by men, let alone godly law, to just kill those people, wipe them out, blow them to pieces. But that's what's happening in this rotten, evil, violent world. And we can be so happy and thankful to God that he will send Jesus Christ back to this earth to make a stop to this. This would not be allowed anymore by any human leader to do something like that. It is absolutely wrong. It is absolutely unconscionable. Now, you also might have heard that Donald Trump signed a proclamation on Friday that would impose an annual $100,000 fee on H-1B visa applications. $100,000 fee a year for those who are coming in from other countries, in most cases, very talented people. Elon Musk said that it brings in highly skilled workers, essential to filling talent gaps and keeping firms competitive. Musk, himself a naturalized US citizen born in South Africa, once held a H-1B visa. The question is also asked, well, does Trump even have the authority to impose those exorbitant annual fees? But I also felt another article which was interesting, saying that Trump hits H-1B visas with $100,000 fee, targeting the program that launched Elon Musk and Instagram. And then he said, the reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of H-1B. Take a big step back. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. Now we'll see how this is going to end up, because it's going to be another fight between Trump and Elon Musk. Now, two more, but one more which comes close to us. It's close to home. And of course, you might have heard about it. It's an article by The Guardian, which was just published today. Immigrant advocacy organizations and activists are bracing for a crackdown from the federal government following threats from the Trump administration to root out and criminally prosecute non-profit groups. Non-profit groups. Donald Trump and his closest allies have periodically threatened immigrant rights activists and non-profits, including those that distribute food and water to migrants. They have been threatened with arrest for doing that. It also says the Department of Homeland Security has expanded its definition of threats to include the filming of ICE operations. Now, if anybody can listen to something like that, and I'm not even talking about all these raids and all the comments which were made recently by Tom Homan, and you're looking at the statistics he is giving, and then you're comparing it with the statistics which have been published, and there's really no similarity. But if you can listen to this and don't see where we are going in this country, then I really can help you. Of course, some will say, oh, Mr. Link is again on an anti-Trump agenda and blah, blah, blah. And somebody wrote me that. He said, well, you are engaging in treasonous conduct and you should go back to your homeland, Germany. We don't want you here. Somebody wrote me. Well, for the information of this person, I'm also an American, all right? But you see, treasonous comment and conduct because I'm telling you the things which are happening. Now, if you don't want to listen, you don't want to listen. But don't make these outlandish and ridiculous statements. You're just putting yourself in the corner of being a fool. You heard all about Jimmy Kimmel's suspension. Now, you may like Jimmy Kimmel, you may not like Jimmy Kimmel. You may like what he says, you may not like what he says. It's not the point. The point is he was suspended for something which certain ones didn't like. Disney, ABC, and others suspended him indefinitely. But they now have a tiger on their hands because the reaction towards that suspension was so surprisingly strong against ABC, against Disney, against others. They are surprised by this. And now they are in quote-unquote negotiations to try to get Jimmy Kimmel back. But the damage, of course, has been done. And so the late night people who have these shows, the comedians, whether it's Stephen Colbert, whether it's Jimmy Fallon, I have all the list of those who spoke out, David Letterman, Seth Meyers, Jay Leno, even Ted Cruz blasted the FCC chairman, Brandon Carr, and his threats. Apparently those threats have led to the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, saying, well, it's unbelievably dangerous what the guy did, and compared some of his rhetoric to mafioso tactics. And then you have others, like the former CEO of the Disney Corporation, Michael Eisner. He strongly spoke against that. And even Bill Mayer spoke against it, the HBO host. And I thought it was kind of funny because he said, you know, he was also kicked out by ABC when he made comments about 9/11, which they didn't like. And he says, well, ABC stands for Always Be Caving. ABC, Always Be Caving. And then, of course, this was also funny, I thought. This was done by Jon Stewart. It says he made a rare Thursday night appearance on The Daily Show, speaking in front of a gold-inspired backdrop, wearing a dark suit and red tie, both nods to Trump's preferred attire and decor. From Comedy Central, it's the all-new government-approved Daily Show with your patriotically obedient host, Jon Stewart. An announcer began the show. And on it goes. Britain has taken note, Germany has taken note, they are strongly condemning what is happening here, and they say it's definitely an attack on free speech. BBC wrote an article saying America at a dangerous crossroads. All of these articles will be in the next update. But the interesting thing is Germany, and I want to close with these comments. You all will recall that J.D. Vance made some strong statements when he was over there in Europe, against especially Germany and Britain, saying, oh, they are engaged in restriction and suppression of free speech. And of course, he talked also about Germany's attempt to prohibit the AfD party. And he was right. I said it then, I'm saying it now. He was right. He absolutely said something which was true. Germany is engaged in suppression of free speech. But let's also not forget that when the Biden administration was in power, they most certainly started suppressing free speech, especially when it came to the coronavirus situation. And they would have put a lot of pressure on certain groups, Google, Facebook, Twitter, others, to say you don't publish anything which would question the government's measures. And they buckled. They buckled. They agreed to that. They were cowards. They wouldn't allow anything being either published, or if it was published, it was down at the bottom. You could never find it. But now, since we have now an administration which is no longer democratic, it's Republican, now the same thing is happening. And the media is buckling, absolutely, caving in. And of course, some say it has a lot to do with money, because there was a deal in the making, and of course the FCC would have to approve of that deal. Now, how is that different? It's not different. It's the same thing. And so Germany is saying now, wait a minute now. Okay, so they are attacking us of suppressing free speech, and what are they doing? They are suppressing free speech even in a worse way than we do. And they have a point. They have a point. And so America is being looked at more and more like a hypocritical nation, run by a hypocritical government, who is not taking care of and doing what they accuse others of doing. So all of that, I'm bringing this up because I want you to understand that the relationship is going to go downhill. I mean, England can try whatever they want to try to cater in to Trump. Ultimately, it's not going to work. And even the British press is saying, well, you know, all these niceties which they did for Trump, what did it do for us? Nothing, just about nothing afterwards. So we are living in dangerous times. We are seeing more and more how everything is going downhill. The abyss of World War III is there. It will not happen quite as many people think, because it's not going to be at this point a war between NATO and Russia, but it's going to be a war between Europe under German leadership and the United States of America and Great Britain. And let me just say one other thing. We keep looking for the beast. We know what most, even in the churches of God, don't seem to know, that it has to be a person of German or Austrian descent. Now, some look at people in France, in Spain, Italy, wherever. No, it has to be a person of German or Austrian descent. And according to the Bible, I mean, Germany and Austria is one nation in that sense, so it doesn't really matter. Now, I don't see anybody at this point who has clearly manifested himself to be the beast. I have some suspicions, but I don't want to say them yet, because we have had suspicions in the past, in the history of the church, and those suspicions didn't come true, even though the people who we had focused on could very well have been the ones if the time would have been right. Some of you who are longer in the church, have been longer in the church, will recall the German finance minister, Franz Josef Strauss. Now, Mr. Armstrong felt strongly that he could very well be the one. In fact, he had a meeting with them. It was either Herbert Armstrong or Garner Ted Armstrong. I'm not sure who of the two. They interviewed him, they talked to him, and then they said to him, God has something very important for you in mind. And according to what I've heard, Strauss was very thinking about it very strongly, what that might have meant. Of course, then he died in his own airplane of a heart attack, so it wasn't him. Then I felt that possibly Jörg Haider from Austria could be the one, because again, the profile would have fit. But it obviously was the time. And then when he died mysteriously in a car crash, then we learned that he was actually homosexual, even though he was married and had a daughter. And if I had known that ahead of time, I would have been even feeling more strongly that he might have been the one, but he wasn't. And so, again, there are people, they have to be alive. The beast has to be alive. He hasn't manifested himself yet, but he has to be alive. And he will manifest himself in due time, and so will be the false prophet. And let me just close by saying, if we had somebody in Germany or Austria who would be somebody like Putin, who would be somebody like Trump, who would be somebody like Erdogan in Turkey, who would even be somebody like Macron in France, I would have no doubt who the beast would be. But we don't have anybody like that at this point yet. So we'll have to wait. But the most critical development in prophecy is who is going to be that beast. And once we know that, then we know the time is almost there.